I think back about growing up in northern Michigan, and it makes me wonder, what is this love of gun that holds us in its sway? I think about my childhood days, swayed by memories of playing war, hiding behind the corner of my house with fingers pointed, pow, pow, pow. We chose sides, the Germans versus the Americans. It was during the Vietnam War, but we preferred to refight the war of our fathers. There were only 4 or 5 of us kids in the neighborhood, so all death was temporary. You count to 10 and return to fight again. I had quite an arsenal. A Western-style cap gun with its roll of red caps. The snub-nosed Super Bang gangster gun that was so much louder. I had a James Bond gun that looked like a camera, and you pressed a button and it turned into a Luger. Like the Nazi souvenir my father had locked inside his roll-top desk. I had an air rifle that didn't shoot BBs, but rather just made a loud explosion of air. And because it had no projectiles, we had to be creative, and we'd stick the barrel of that gun into the dirt and clog up the front, and then we'd cock it and pop, and the spray of dirt would go all over. We had these Star Trek phasers, which came with hard little plastic discs. I've seen them in the stores now. They have soft foam discs now, but when in the 60s, these were hard little plastic discs that really stung. And so we went back to the little rubber pellet guns with the little yellow pellets, because those hurt less when you got hit. By junior high, most boys and girls put away the toys and took gun safety. They put away the toys and hunted for real. The first day of deer season in junior high and high school, my friend Andre and I were the only boys who attended class, along with very few girls. And people would drive into the high school parking lot with a rifle in the rack in the back and the deer across the hood of the car, and everybody would come to see the kill. And deer hung from neighborhood trees like strange fruit, gutted and ready for butchering. Guns are part of life in the North Woods, a tool for feeding the family, a way of life, the culture I grew up in. What is this love of gun that holds us in its sway? I think about the birth of our nation. Guns, God, and guts, they say, made this nation great. In the name of God, they imported slaves. The sons of Canaan, cursed by Noah, were chained into the holds of the arks of the Middle Passage. Armed slave patrols were necessary to prevent insurrection. When the Constitution said that only the federal government could raise an army in Article 10, slave states argued that a well-regulated militia must be enshrined in the Constitution to protect states from insurrections from those who were deemed to be 3/5 of a person they needed to be controlled. Others, in the name of God, advocated abolition. John Brown raided the arsenal at Harper's Ferry, hoping to arm the slaves. Soon, a great and terrible war was fought, and slavery was abolished. But the Ku Klux Klan rose armed and ready, a terrorist army holding freedom in check, all in the name of Jesus under the light of a burning cross. In the name of God, we shot the Indians, clearing the promised land of heathens. Guns propelled the Western expansion. The manifest destiny of might makes right. But sometimes in our history, the right has made its way without guns. Women protested nonviolently for the vote. In the name of God, they were told to stay in their place. But they petitioned their government decade after decade after decade until their voice was heard. The civil rights movement was done nonviolently. They walked across the Pettus Bridge in the face of armed police. Their leaders were assassinated, but the cause of freedom would not die. Guns and bullets could not prevent America from getting better. The gay liberation movement was nonviolent. A gun lover killed Harvey Milk, but he could not stop the movement. It takes more guts to march without a gun than to march with one, protected only by a cause that is just. I remember years ago walking women past an angry mob in Milwaukee, defending their right to abortion, knowing full well that the pro-fetus protesters were capable of shooting at us as they had done at other sites. How is it pro-life to go into a church and shoot a doctor? Some people shoot at people just for going to a church that is different than what they worship at. A gun lover shot Sikhs in Milwaukee, but guns could not stop religious freedom. A gun lover shot up the Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville a few years ago. Guns cannot stop religious freedom. Some try to use the Second Amendment to destroy the First. But unarmed citizens have the guts to defend their right to peaceably assemble and to worship and even petition the government. It takes guts to be unarmed. I saw on the internet that somebody wanted people to put signs in their yard, this house is unprotected. They were trying to get to show that people wouldn't put these signs in their yard, that the threat of a gun is the biggest safety. But then I wondered, what if Trayvon had unarmed written on the back of his hoodie? Would he have been perceived as less of a threat? What is this love of guns that holds us in its sway? Is it the promise of self-preservation? Some say they have a gun to protect their family. They say this even though a gun in the house is more likely to be used on a family member than an intruder. Would you keep a tiger in your house in the hope that they may eat an intruder, or a moat with crocodiles? You might lose a child or two in the process, but the burglars will stay away. If someone pulls a gun on you, it's too late to be protected by a gun. You will be shot while reaching for your gun. Only in our childhood fantasy westerns is there a fair standoff in the middle of the street. Yet we have learned to worship the hero with the gun. It always seems like the simple solution in the movies. Roy Rogers, John Wayne, Clint Eastwood, Rambo, and Django Unchained. These movies are violent, But no one has been killed by these movies. Our movies go all over the world. All other cultures watch them. They don't take the DVD out of the case and go slice people's heads off with a DVD like Odd Job with his scary hat in the James Bond movies. Because the citizens around the world have less access to guns, they kill each other less. States with higher gun ownership have higher gun death rates. The gun is a false idol, a false talisman of protection. If you are afraid of your government, do you really think an AR-15 is going to protect you from tear gas, tanks, and trained marksmen? Do you think that we should allow every citizen to have nuclear weapons just so citizens have a chance? Perhaps I need a personal drone. A gun for hunting is a tool. A gun for self-defense is not impossible. People can cite many cases where a gun stopped the situation from getting more violent. But there are more cases of guns being used to intimidate, attack, or be used in suicides. Gun lovers say that guns don't kill people, people kill people. If they truly believed this, they would buy squirt guns for self-defense, or maybe solve disputes with pillow fights. But no, they buy guns because they are the most efficient way for people to kill other people. I don't want to pry your gun from your cold, dead hand. I want to help prevent that hand from being cold and dead. I don't want to read of another tragic accident or suicide or domestic dispute gone wrong. I want you to be alive. I wish I knew how to calm the fears. And I know both sides of this issue use fear. But we need to be able to distinguish between rational fear and irrational fear. A bullet coming towards my chest causes a rational fear if I have time to think. I know that is going to do me harm. Someone looting a store and running off with a VCR, do we kill that person saying that their life is less valuable than a piece of electronic equipment? A person sneaking into our country to mow our lawn, is that a rational fear to shoot that person? People moving into your neighborhood that used to be so lily white is not a rational fear and is not a reason to shoot. I wish I knew how to calm people's fears. I wish there was not such a fear of brown-skinned people. There's not going to be a race war. I'm not wanting guns to be prohibited because I see what prohibition does. Alcohol prohibition increased the guns in Chicago. The gangsters used a new Tommy gun to defend their turf. drug prohibition has created a violent black market. If we treated addiction as a disease rather than a crime, if drug use was decriminalized, the need for gun violence would decrease. What is this love of guns that holds us in its sway? Can this love be well regulated? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What is the meaning of well-regulated? What is the meaning of infringe? Some gun lovers argue that any regulation infringes on their right to bear arms. They want a non-regulated militia. They say there are already too many laws, and I agree. Conflicting state and city regulations allow guns to be shipped from one place to another. A uniform federal law would simplify things and lead to better enforcement. Some say criminals don't follow the law. This is true. But a law allows you to take action against those who break it. If there was no law against murder, then we could not prosecute homicides. And sometimes regulation increases freedom. Take automobiles. They kill almost as many people as guns. But because they also serve other purposes, we want to keep them around. We do not ban cars. We engage in harm reduction. We create rules that enhance their safe use. These regulations do not infringe on the right to own a car. Cars are limited by size. They need to fit in the lanes of a highway. A tank is a car with a gun. And some tanks are too big for our roads, and plus the treads tear up the roads and cost the highway department too much. They ban studded snow tires. I'm sure tank treads would do worse damage. And semi-trailer trucks, the really big trucks, require special license to operate. Who would be harmed by requiring special licenses for special guns? And to drive your car, you need to pass a driver's test. Why is there no safety test for gun owners? My car has an identification number. If my car is used in a crime, I am liable. Why don't we have a registry of guns? Each gun has a unique ballistic fingerprint. Why isn't each gun tested before it's sold? If cops find a bullet in someone, they could trace the bullet to the owner of the gun. We have speed limits on our highways. We can limit the speed at which bullets can be fired. We can limit the size of the clip. Automobiles have locks. Only those with keys can operate them. Why don't guns have locks? It would prevent many accidental deaths. Gun control is a word that strikes fear in some people. They do not want to be controlled by the government. But I'm talking about gun safety. I know responsible gun owners who lock their guns separate from their ammunition. They've gotten trained in the proper use of firearms. My brother-in-law, who probably disagrees with this whole speech, prohibited his kids from playing with guns because guns are not toys, they're tools, and they should be respected. Responsible gun owners are already following sensible rules. Why would they object to unresponsible gun owners following the same rules? Responsible drivers do not object to traffic laws. I am glad those laws are there, and I want people to obey them. Not all auto deaths can be prevented, but the number can and has been reduced. Gun regulation does not infringe on gun ownership. It enhances it and helps it to be done safely. Those who need to hoard guns in fear of a race war or government tyranny may suffer from paranoia. Would they pass a mental exam allowing them to own a gun? But most people have guns because they love them. They love to shoot. They remind them of hunting with their dad and their family. Target shooting is a legitimate sport. Hunting is a cultural expression, and sometimes a very needed source of food in impoverished rural areas. I do not want to revoke the right to have a gun. Banning alcohol and drugs have not worked. Prohibition just drives behavior underground. But I do want people to realize that every right has a responsibility. Responsible behaviors can be written into law. The love of gun need not be a reckless infatuation. It can be a safer situation. God, guns, and guts. It's an interesting concept. If fear drives you to buy a gun, do you have guts? If you trust in a gun, do you really trust in God? The love of guns is misplaced. We are called to love people, including our enemies. When Jesus said, "Love your enemies," I'm pretty sure he meant don't kill them. How many lives will we sacrifice for the sake of guns? Should we be in the business of protecting guns, or should we protect people?